Leo Tolstoy is often hailed as one of the greatest literary minds of all time. With War and Peace and Anna Karenina still celebrated as masterpieces, his ability to delve deep into the human condition remains unparalleled. Yet, beneath the brilliance of his storytelling lay a man consumed by questions many of us have pondered. Why am I here? What is the purpose of life? Is there any meaning to it all? These questions came to haunt Tolstoy despite his outward success. He had achieved fame, amassed wealth, and enjoyed the love of a large family. Yet he felt an insurmountable void within. His inner turmoil reflects a paradox that many face today. The more we achieve materially, the emptier we may feel spiritually. This video will take you on Tolstoy's journey from despair to enlightenment, uncovering how he grappled with some of life's toughest questions. By understanding his story, we may uncover lessons for our own lives. Leo Tolstoy was born on September 9, 1828, into the Russian aristocracy. His family estate, Yasnaya Polyana, was a sprawling property in Tula province, offering the idyllic life of wealth and privilege. However, this privilege could not shield him from the harsh realities of life. Tragedy struck early and decisively in young Tolstoy's life. His mother died when he was just 2 years old, leaving an irreplaceable void. Shortly after, his father passed away when Tolstoy was 9. Orphaned at such a tender age, he and his siblings were raised by relatives, shuttled between family members. These early losses had a profound effect on Tolstoy, shaping his worldview and setting the stage for his lifelong struggle with existential questions. Without the comforting presence of parental figures, Tolstoy grew up feeling an acute sense of abandonment. This loneliness planted the seeds of skepticism toward traditional religious teachings, as he questioned how a benevolent God could allow such suffering to occur. Tolstoy's teenage years were marked by rebellion and indulgence, behaviors not uncommon for young men of his social standing. Yet, even during this period, a duality in his personality began to emerge. On one hand, he embraced the hedonistic pursuits of gambling, drinking, and casual relationships. On the other, he exhibited a reflective side, documenting his inner conflicts in journals. These writings reveal a young man who was deeply dissatisfied with the shallow pleasures of aristocratic life. Tolstoy often castigated himself for his perceived moral failings, noting in his diary how he squandered time and opportunities. This pattern of intense self-criticism would follow him throughout his life, driving both his creative genius and his existential despair. Tolstoy enrolled at Kazan University in 1844, intending to study law and Oriental languages. However, his academic career was short-lived. He struggled with the rigid structure of formal education, finding it uninspiring and disconnected from the broader questions that fascinated him. After failing his exams, he left the university without a degree. Despite this setback, Tolstoy's time at Kazan was not wasted. He was introduced to the works of Rousseau, which left a lasting impression. Rousseau's ideas on natural living and the corrupting influence of civilization resonated deeply with Tolstoy, foreshadowing the themes he would explore in his later life. It was during this period that Tolstoy began to grapple with questions of morality, justice, and human purpose, laying the intellectual groundwork for his future works. In the early 1850s, Tolstoy joined the Russian army, serving in the Caucasus and later in the Crimean War. Military life brought him face to face with the brutality of human conflict, further intensifying his inner struggles. His time in the army also provided rich material for his early writings, works like the Cossacks and Sevastopol sketches drew from his experiences, offering vivid portrayals of war and the human condition. Tolstoy's military career also marked the beginning of his transition from a young aristocrat to a serious writer. His observations of the soldiers' simple yet profound faith contrasted sharply with his own doubts. These experiences planted the first seeds of admiration for the resilience of ordinary people, a theme that would later play a crucial role in his search for meaning. Tolstoy's literary debut came in 1852 with the publication of Childhood, the first part of a semi-autobiographical trilogy. The novel was an instant success, earning him recognition as a promising young writer. Boyhood and youth followed, solidifying his reputation. Despite this early acclaim, Tolstoy remained restless. He viewed his writing as a way to explore and resolve his inner conflicts, rather than merely a means to achieve fame. Even as he gained popularity, he was plagued by a sense of incompleteness, feeling that his literary success was hollow without answers to life's ultimate questions. Tolstoy's early exposure to the Russian Orthodox Church left him disillusioned. He found the Church's rituals empty and its clergy hypocritical. This skepticism grew as he observed the disconnect between the Church's teachings and the realities of life, particularly the suffering of the poor. His journals from this period reveal a young man grappling with profound spiritual doubts. He questioned the existence of God, the meaning of morality, and the purpose of life itself. These questions would follow him into adulthood, becoming central to his later existential crisis. Returning to Yasnaya Polyana after his military service, Tolstoy took over the management of his family estate. Here, he immersed himself in agricultural experiments, education reform, and writing. He established a school for peasant children, reflecting his growing interest in social justice and the lives of the less privileged. Yet, even in this idyllic setting, Tolstoy could not escape his inner turmoil. Yasnaya Polyana became both a sanctuary and a cage, a place where he sought peace but often found himself overwhelmed by the weight of his unanswered questions. By the time Tolstoy reached his 30s, he had achieved more than most could dream of. He was a celebrated writer, a wealthy landowner, and a respected figure in Russian society. Yet, beneath this veneer of success, he felt increasingly lost. The tragedies of his early life, his exposure to human suffering in the military, and his growing disillusionment with organized religion had created a perfect storm of existential doubt. Tolstoy's early experiences laid the foundation for the profound crises that would define his later years. They also provided the raw material for his literary works, which remain some of the most penetrating explorations of the human condition. By the mid-19th century, Tolstoy had firmly established himself as one of Russia's most influential writers. His monumental works, War and Peace, 1869, and Anna Karenina, 1878, were hailed as masterpieces that redefined the novel as a form of literature. These books were not merely stories. They were immersive explorations of human emotion, history, and morality. In War and Peace, Tolstoy masterfully wove the lives of fictional characters into the fabric of historical events like the Napoleonic Wars. The novel's scope and detail captivated readers and critics alike. Similarly, Anna Karenina offered a searing critique of societal norms, exploring themes of love, betrayal, and the search for meaning. Despite these achievements, Tolstoy's inner world was unraveling. He once described his fame as a deceitful glitter, a superficial recognition that failed to address his deeper questions about existence. At this time, Tolstoy was not only a literary giant, but also a man of significant wealth. He owned vast estates, managed successful agricultural ventures, and enjoyed the comforts of aristocratic life. His marriage to Sofia Andreevna, a devoted partner and the mother of his 13 children, seemed idyllic from the outside. However, Tolstoy's journals reveal a man deeply conflicted. He often wrote about the burden of his wealth, feeling that his material possessions alienated him from the suffering masses. He also struggled with his role as a husband and father, sometimes feeling trapped by familial responsibilities. As Tolstoy entered his 50s, his inner discontent grew unbearable. He described waking up each morning with a question that loomed over him like a dark cloud. Why? This existential despair reached its peak when Tolstoy admitted to contemplating suicide. His essay, A Confession, written during this period, offers a raw and unfiltered account of his struggles. He wrote, "Is there any meaning in my life that the inevitable death awaiting me does not destroy?" Tolstoy's despair was not unique to him. It was a reflection of a broader existential crisis that many individuals face when material success fails to satisfy deeper spiritual needs. In his search for meaning, Tolstoy turned to philosophy, studying the works of Socrates, Aristotle, Schopenhauer, and Buddha. He hoped that these great thinkers could provide answers to his burning questions. However, while their teachings offered intellectual stimulation, they did not satisfy his yearning for emotional and spiritual clarity. Socrates and the Unexamined Life. Tolstoy admired Socrates' emphasis on self-reflection, but found his reliance on reason inadequate for addressing existential dread. Schopenhauer's pessimism. Schopenhauer's view of life as inherently painful resonated with Tolstoy, but left him even more despondent. Science and its shortcomings. Disillusioned with philosophy, Tolstoy turned to science, studying Darwin's theory of evolution and other scientific advancements of his time. While he acknowledged the importance of scientific progress, he criticized its inability to address questions of purpose and meaning. To Tolstoy, science explained the mechanics of life, but not its essence. Tolstoy began to observe how people around him coped with the existential absurdity of life. He identified 4 main approaches. Ignorance. Many people avoided existential questions altogether, living life without delving into its deeper meaning. Indulgence. Some sought distraction in pleasures, wealth, and relationships, focusing on the transient joys of life. Despair. Others succumbed to nihilism, viewing life as meaningless and sometimes contemplating suicide. Faith. A smaller group found solace in belief systems that offered meaning and purpose. Tolstoy saw indulgence as a fleeting escape, likening it to the drops of honey in his parable about the man in the well. Similarly, he rejected despair as an option, believing that life's absurdity required engagement, not surrender. Tolstoy's turning point came through his observations of Russian peasants. Despite their poverty and hardships, they exhibited an unshakable faith in God. Tolstoy was struck by their ability to endure suffering with grace, a stark contrast to his own turmoil. For the peasants, faith was not a philosophical concept, but a lived experience. It gave them a sense of purpose and belonging that transcended material circumstances. Tolstoy realized that reason alone could not address life's deepest questions. Faith offered a way to bridge the gap between the finite and the infinite. Tolstoy's newfound faith led him to reject his previous lifestyle. He began living simply, giving away much of his wealth and focusing on acts of service. He also turned to the teachings of Jesus, interpreting them in a way that emphasized compassion, humility, and nonviolence. Tolstoy's beliefs diverged from the teachings of the Russian Orthodox Church, which he criticized for its materialism and hypocrisy. He developed his own interpretation of Christianity, focusing on the moral and ethical teachings of Jesus rather than dogma. In his later years, Tolstoy became a symbol of spiritual resilience. His works, such as The Kingdom of God is Within You, inspired movements like nonviolent resistance, influencing figures like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. Tolstoy's journey speaks to the universal human struggle for meaning. His story reminds us that material success and intellectual pursuits, while important, cannot replace the need for spiritual fulfillment. Tolstoy spent his final years advocating for social justice, helping the poor, and living in harmony with his beliefs. His death in 1910 marked the end of a life that continues to inspire millions.